I learned in the North Country. How to work with my hands, how to change my oil, how to shoot a gun. I think these skills are part and parcel of what makes us so capable here and why we have such a sense of community. I think those are the skills that will serve me well as the congressman representing this district.
Can we be clear that where were you registered to vote in the last federal election?
My primary residence is Elizabethtown, New York. I did not vote in Elizabethtown in the last election, but I would have been eligible to do so as somebody who pays taxes in this district.
Mr. Funicello.
I will start off by saying I was registered in Queensbury, New York, which is just north of Glens Falls, a suburb, if you will, even though as a town it is older than Glens Falls. I will also repeat the magnanimous words I said before. Aaron and Elise are human beings. I think that their claims to the area, whether they are tenuous or tangible, it's almost irrelevant when you put it next to the issue that matters. I will say my tangible claim is I was born in Wilton, New York, which is in the district currently and was in District 20 prior. I will say that I have maintained residence in the district for all of my adult life and much of my life as a child and a teenager. I will say that my family still does have residence here. I have 4 brothers who live within the district. What I will also say, though, is that when people are trying to buy a congressional seat, that's what disturbs me, not necessarily that their ties to the area are tenuous. And with both of these candidates, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them as people. I'm saying Congress is supposed to be a unique cacophony of voices that shows what is unique about us.
Let's talk about North Country roads and New York roads. The state DOT rates half of New York's roads as poor, but the state DOT gets half of its funding from the Federal Highway Trust Fund, which is going to be broke pretty soon. How would you shore up the Federal Highway Trust Fund, and would you be willing to raise the gas tax beyond where it is now in order to do so? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked this question. Infrastructure is something that's been a focus of our campaign. It's been something I've been working on years long before I decided to run for the seat. We need to address our infrastructure. We've gotten a D+ from the American Society of Civil Engineers. And that's not just roads and bridges or water and sewer. It's also digital infrastructure. It's also having a grid that can work with the kind of distributed generation we're producing here in this district. But to pay for that, we need to talk about raising revenue. I repeat, I'm the only candidate in this race that has come up with a portfolio of options for raising revenue. Those would include stopping the offshoring and inversions at $59 billion a year, capping at 28% the deductions that America's wealthiest taxpayers now deduct from their taxes. That would get us another $40 billion. What about the Buffett rule? $7 to $9 billion, a very reasonable proposal. I don't think we have to raise the gas tax when we have so many options for raising revenue. The unfortunate truth is my opponent her hands are tied and she cannot make these proposals.
Okay, let's have Mr. Funicello answer the same question.
First and foremost, I would like to say it took a lot of effort as a third-party candidate to get on the ballot, and I would really appreciate it, Aaron, if you would address me as your opponent as well, because I am.
Indeed.
Thank you.
I shall.
As far as the issue of highway funding goes, we have a tax reform issue here. If we're going to talk about how can you allocate funds to do something that is important to all of us as a collective, we need to first understand something simple about our economy, and that's that we're $17 trillion in debt. So maybe we just have a problem with the funds not being diverted properly. If we're having a problem with highway funding coming through from the federal government and the state government, or if we're having a problem fixing our rail systems. I would suggest that we stop subsidizing oil companies, not necessarily raising the gas tax on individual consumers and workers. We are taxed enough already. I would suggest that we stop subsidizing the payrolls of large corporations like McDonald's or Walmart. I would suggest we stop economic development in the form of giving GE money for free out of the Federal Reserve so we can lend it to other mechanisms through GE Capital. Thank you.
The Highway Trust Fund and infrastructure in our country is an opportunity to work on a bipartisan basis. This is likely to come up and be one of the initial key issues in the next Congress. And it's an opportunity, I hope, to be able to work across the aisle, similarly to, I think, how Congressman Owens would have worked. The key issues when I think about infrastructure is we need to have a long-term infrastructure plan in this country. Washington has too many short-term stopgap measures that doesn't allow long-term economic growth and long-term economic planning. Infrastructure is more than just our roads. Our trucks are on, my family's business trucks are on the roads 5 days out of the week. But it's also our sewers, it's our waterways, it's rural broadband. We need to make sure that we have the infrastructure to compete in a 21st century economy. I agree with Matt Funicello that we need to address our federal spending to make sure that we're reining in our debt so that we can have long-term infrastructure spending. And I also agree in terms of, Matt pointed out oil subsidies. The only candidate in this race who has nearly $1 million in big oil is my Democratic opponent, Aaron Wolf, who wants to raise your taxes. This is not the time for increasing taxes on hardworking families.
Okay, well, let's get into the next question now, which has to do with student debt, which is at an all-time high in the United States. And it's a massive, massive problem for families. What is your plan to help more kids go to college more affordably? And we will start with Matt Funicello.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. My son is at a SUNY school right now. He goes to SUNY Canton, and he is studying auto engineering and mechanics, and he's paying quite a lot of money to do that. As many in the working class, most of the funding I have probably saved over the last 10 or 15 years hoping to help him with college is no longer there. We've had to spend it on other things. We are living in austerity times, as we know from our wonderful Democratic governor. What I wonder all the time, much as people wonder when they're driving on the Thruway, which is a toll road we built with public money, and we seem to be doing it over and over again, is didn't we build our public university system, and how many times do we need to pay for the education our children are supposed to get from within it? And the answer to me is that they should be getting a free college education. Many industrialized nations around the world do this. If we don't start talking about it at the congressional level, it will never occur. It will simply never happen. If we do start understanding that diversion of funds that are going to corporate America could pay for that education, it's never going to happen.
Elise Stefanik, same question.
Sure. So I think student loans need to be assessed on a bipartisan basis, and I support President Obama's legislation that he signed with the help of Republicans, capping student loan rates so that they're on track with U.S. Treasuries. While my Democratic opponent was still in Manhattan, I was visiting with students across this district at SUNY Plattsburgh, at SUNY Canton, at SUNY Potsdam, Clarkson, St. Lawrence. We are blessed to have some of the best universities in the country, and I've heard firsthand how challenging it is for students to plan right after they graduate to pay off those student loans, which is why I'm focused on also ensuring that we have jobs for our graduates. So I think there's opportunities to work on a local level with businesses, partnering with Clinton County Community College, for example, to make sure that we have vocational and training programs that work with our economy today. But I also think we need to address the rising cost of colleges so that hardworking families can afford to send their kids to college, because right now it's out of reach for so many of our families in the North Country.
Well, my Republican opponent was still living in Washington, which wasn't very long ago. I was researching a project about the looming student debt crisis. This is an example of the kind of work I did before I ran for Congress, which was to look at the ways that policies affect people. We've got a $1.2 trillion debt load now with students. This is a looming economic crisis that could be akin to the mortgage defaults if we begin to default on these loans. But the biggest crisis of all is when we propose a cap, such as that Elise Stefanik has just mentioned, along with Obama. We're not talking about allowing students to refinance, the ones that are carrying the debt load, to refinance according to those levels. And I think that's a really key and important distinction. According to the Warren proposal, which I embrace and endorse, students would be able to refinance loans with those debt loads and get them at the levels of the cap that Ms. Stefanik is talking about. Why is that important? It's important because The students now that are carrying loads of hundreds of thousands of dollars are not, and the former students are not able to get married. They're not able to start a family. They're not able to invest in North Country businesses. That's a big cost to our economy.
Next question about the environment. A number of environmental groups in the Champlain Valley are concerned about the influx of train cars carrying crude oil, including tar sands oil, and they travel, as you know, right along the Lake Champlain shoreline. Many of us remember the disaster up in Quebec just last summer. I'm asking each of you if you would tell us how you feel about